Howdy friends and neighbors, it's John, and I am just like all of you. I'm watching the presidential results slowly roll in, and they keep talking on the news how turnout is unprecedented, and at this moment Joe Biden has more votes than anyone in all of history. And that got me to wondering, who else has the most votes? So I went online and I looked up the top people, the top candidates with the most votes throughout history. And it was a really boring fact-finding mission because, as it turns out, all of the top vote-getting elections have all happened within my lifetime. And in fact, they've all happened since the turn of the century, because more people are voting, more people have access to voting, there are more people, so on and so forth. So, for example, we've got Joe Biden is number 1, Barack Obama is number 2, Donald Trump's number 3, Barack Obama's number 4, Hillary Clinton's number 5, yada, yada, yada. Not that interesting. What was interesting to me were the bottom vote getters of all time. Now that is a list that inspired me to go down a rabbit hole. And I thought, since I went down the rabbit hole, I would drag you with me kicking and screaming. So get ready to go down the rabbit hole. It's the best kind of hole. Lots of people have been on the presidential ticket through the ages, so you have to draw a line somewhere. I drew a line at 100,000 votes. We're going to start 10 from the bottom of the list. So number 10 is a guy called Norman Thomas. Norman Thomas received 117,000 votes, give or take, in 1940. Norman Thomas was the Socialist Party candidate. Norman Thomas was an American Presbyterian minister who was a socialist, a pacifist, and ran for president 6 times. Now, Norman Thomas ended up becoming the socialist candidate because the socialists needed somebody to run. Their top 2 political leaders could not run for president because they weren't born in the United States. And number 3 was the mayor of Milwaukee. This may be shocking to you, but most Americans did not find socialism to be very appealing during the 1940s. Number 9 lowest vote getter, Thomas E. Watson, ran in 1904 for the Populists. And he scored himself just over 114,000 votes. He was a newspaper editor and lawyer from Georgia. He had previously been the vice presidential nominee for William Jennings Bryan in 1896 on the Populist ticket. Thomas Watson was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1890, and he's one of the people that pushed through the rural free delivery of mail. The Populists were on their way out. Watson ran in 1904, and the party was dissolved in 1908. Number 8 on the list, John Haglin, received just under 114,000 votes in 1996. That's right. He is still around. He was a candidate for the Natural Law Party. Right now lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and is the leader of the Transcendental Meditation movement in the United States. He was a presidential candidate 3 times for the Natural Law Party, whose platform included preventive health care, sustainable agriculture, and renewable energy technologies. Sounds like maybe he was just ahead of his time. The number 7 lowest vote getter, John Quincy Adams. This is somebody you probably are familiar with. He actually was a president. He served as the 6th president of the United States from 1825 to 1829. He picked up just over 113,000 votes in 1824. He lost the popular vote, but he won the presidency. Tale as old as time. Number 6 on the list, Coleman Andrews from 1956 got almost 108,000 votes for the States' Rights Party. He was an accountant and a government official. He ran not a very exciting campaign. He was an accountant after all. Shout out to my accountant buddies. And he ended up with 0.17% of the vote. Here we are. We're at the top 5. Number 5 on the list, Beau Gritz. That's right, we had a presidential candidate named Beau Gritz, and actually he is still around also. He ran for president in 1992 as a populist. That's right, the populists were back in the late 90s. He got himself just over 106,000 votes. He was a former United States Army Special Forces officer. Ran under the slogan, God, Guns, and Grits. It was his personal mission during his life to try to attempt to locate prisoners of war, and he undertook a series of private trips into South Asia to look for prisoners of war and try to locate them and bring them home. Part of his standard stump speech during his presidential run was that the Treasury should mint $1 trillion coin. Just make one of those coins and then just run it over to the Federal Reserve and pay off the debt that way. Number 4 on the list. This is going to be a familiar name to you. A Democratic Republican from the year 1804 that pulled in just over 104,000 votes. Thomas Jefferson. He actually won the presidency in 1804 with just that many votes. That was his re-election year. During that election, only 11 out of the 17 states decided to use the popular vote to choose their electors. And of course, during that time, the states that did choose electors by popular vote, they had extreme restrictions on who could vote based on property requirements, skin color, and gender. Number 3 on the list, Claude A. Watson, who pulled in almost 104,000 votes in 1948 with the Prohibition Party. Claude Watson was a lawyer and minister from California. He was the first presidential candidate in history to be a pilot, and he flew his own airplane, and he flew over 16,000 miles campaigning. My 6 seconds of searching on the internet revealed very little about him except the dude legit did not like alcohol. Number 2 on the list, William Z. Foster. He got just over 103,000 votes in 1932 running for the Communist Party. He had previously been successful organizing the packing house industry during World War I and the steel strike of 1919. Nobody really expected the Communist Party to do anything. By the year 1932, he ran, he got some votes. And finally, the number 1 on the list, just under 101,000 votes, William Wert, who ran in 1832 for the Anti-Masonic Party. William Wert was the longest-serving Attorney General in U.S. history. Wert was the very first candidate for the Anti-Masonic Party, and in fact, he was a former Freemason himself. Historians say that Wert was possibly the most reluctant and most unwilling presidential candidate ever nominated by an American party. As soon as he was selected, he started to regret his nomination, and he started to distance himself from actually campaigning. And maybe one of the most interesting things about William Wert, someone in the 1970s broke into his tomb in Washington, D.C. and stole his skull. They later on recovered the skull from someone who collected historical oddities. The Smithsonian was able to determine that the skull was indeed his. It was in a box with letters that said, Honorable William Wert. Interesting stories about those 10 people that didn't get very many votes. Much more interesting than those people that got tons and tons. Thanks for subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching my videos wherever you find them. Talk to you soon.